He said, I'm there, but it's like I'm not there. And he just started crying. The amazing thing about the horses is they can hold that space and provide safety for somebody. I've worked with a lot of men that have been sexually abused. You know, it's unreal the amount of men that have gone through sexual abuse I never would have dreamed. You need to hear, you know, yeah, this sucks. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to feel what you're feeling, and that's what the horses allow them to do.
Trauma impacts people differently, right?
Yes.
Everybody's trauma is different when it comes down to it. The trauma the two siblings experience is completely different, even though it happened at the same time. Realize like, oh, it's the environment that causes people to come up, and it changes the energy and it changes the success.
They have become a version of themselves that they no longer love, and they feel stuck, they feel those things. And also it's the thought of going, well, you're not gonna find the version you love anymore if you're stuck in the same place that you became an unhealthy version of yourself.
Well, we are here at the Story Ranch in Cave Creek, Arizona with a very, very dear friend of mine, and one that was a major part of my rehab journey and my rehabilitation and going through. And it was one of the things that's really interesting is, if you didn't know this, there's not just talk therapy, there's horse therapy, as you can see Bailey back here. I didn't know anything about equine therapy until I got to Silverman's, and this young lady to my left was instrumental in just teaching and training and all the different things that we learned from equine therapy, which I had no idea existed. So welcome, Janice, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you from my heart and my life. My family thanks you, as Christian's behind the camera, so does Garrett.
Yeah, very much so.
We're all here, so thank you for the impact that you've had on my life and all the lives that you have impacted. So I want to unpack who you are first, if you want to introduce yourself and just kind of tell everybody what you do, and then I want to unpack what equine therapy is and the impact and your story and all the things that you're doing now.
Okay. Well, my name's Janice Story. I've been around horses all my life. My grandfather and aunts and uncles had horses when I was little. I wanted to be a jockey and got a little bit too tall for that, a little bit too big. But I got to do the next best thing, and I galloped racehorses for a long time. Trained thoroughbred racehorses for 15 years.
Awesome.
And what I found throughout my life is anytime I was going through something, I just felt better when I was with the horses. I didn't know why at the time. I just knew I felt better. I felt different. I kind of grew up not being able to talk to anybody. Felt like I never had any type of support. And they were my support. I could tell them anything. You know, there's one of the greatest thing about horses is there's no judgment. There's no expectations. The only thing they expect from you is clean water and some food, right, to be taken care of.
That's fun, but I also feel like I've been judged by horses so many times. I'm like, oh, horse, and it's like, and it just walks away from me, and I'm like, it's okay.
Bailey's saying, literally let go of that thought, right?
He is, literally.
Right on cue. Drop that, let go of it. Release that right now.
Well said, Bailey, thank you.
This is what they do.
It's like our kids, 5,000 square feet, and they all party in 100 square feet at this big old arena, and you got to pee right there.
Yep.
It's like you're in my bathroom corner.
You had to get your attention somehow when you started saying that.
Yes. Awesome. All right, well, how did you then venture into the kind of the therapy side? What was your experience bringing you into working with horses for a healing journey?
Well, I got into some other stuff. I became a certified mind, body, spirit practitioner. Got into doing a lot of meditation, and was working with clients. And they always wanted to come out and see the horses, right? And I started bringing the horses into the sessions and saw amazing, I sometimes will often just call them miracles, because to me that's what they were. I saw amazing transformations happen, and it was really cool. And so the more I started doing that, I was just like, wow, this is incredible. And I had more people reaching out to me. Hey, so-and-so had this amazing experience at your place. I'd like to come out and do it. So that's kind of how it got started.
So weird, because it's not the way I remember my first session. It was like, here's this miniature horse, now get it back in the pen. 7 guys running around chasing this little horse around going, yep, this is therapy.
That's awesome.
This is how you're going to stop drinking, chase the horse.
No, it wasn't exactly chasing.
Yeah,
If
well,
I recall
yeah.
correctly, we
Yeah.
were trying to work together as a team to get
Right.
through an obstacle
Yeah.
course.
You
But
left
it
that
was
part
fun.
out.
Yeah, well, you know.
And you guys forgot to ask for help.
I asked for the leash and you said no, or the reins, or whatever it is, the lead.
Had
You
to
just
let
had to use
you
your arms
struggle.
and stuff.
Right,
Had
right.
to let you struggle a little bit.
What have been some of the coolest transformations that you've seen in your tenure of helping people? You know, experience and get close to big animals that bring so much life.
Oh my gosh, how much time do you have?
Christian has to be at the open later, but I'm here all day, so
It's, you know, I think one of the moments that always really sticks out was actually over at Silverman's estate. We only had one client there at the time, and I hadn't met him. He had come in the day before. So my first interaction with him was at the barn with the horses in the morning. And put him in a stall. He had never been around horses and was a little bit nervous being in there. And I put him in the stall and asked him, you know, I just invited him to connect with the horse for a little bit. It was actually Bailey. And he walked over, you know, looking at me like, what do I do? And I got a brush out and I said, here's a brush if you'd like to brush her, or you can just pet her. And he literally said, how? I said, just put your hand on her. Just allow yourself just to be with her. And as I observed him a little bit, I could feel his emotions coming up. And I just stood back and watched. And the more time he spent with her, it almost makes me tear up because it was such an emotional moment. And pretty soon I could just feel him just wanting to let loose. And so I walked up and I asked him, I said, what's going on right now? What are you feeling in your body? What's coming up? And he kind of looked at me like, what do you mean? And I said, how are you feeling right now? And he looked at me and he said, oh my gosh. He said, I feel like I've been living my life looking through a window pane at my family and I'm not in the picture. He said, I'm there, but it's like I'm not there. And he lost it. He just started crying. And so I invited him to lean on the horse and he put his head on her shoulder and she just turned her neck around and held him.
oh,
And I asked, I said, do you mind if I put my hand on you? Just so he could feel that support. So just very firmly put my hand on his back. And he cried for about 10 minutes over this horse. And she just held him. And he didn't know how to feel his emotions.
yeah.
Right? And I find that a lot of times with women too, but really with men. You guys forget how to feel. Or you don't know how.
Or you hold
You're
it
not
back.
comfortable or you hold it back.
Yeah.
It's been shoving it down for you.
Yep.
Shoving it
Yep.
down.
Yep.
Yeah. And this was an opportunity for this man just to let loose. The amazing thing about the horses is they can hold that space and provide safety for somebody. That's what makes them so incredible, is they create such a safe environment that it allows somebody to do that. You can't get there sometimes in talk therapy, right? You're too busy talking to be silent and to be in the moment. And that's what the horses do best. And that started this man on his journey. And it was just incredible to be able to witness that and hold that space. And for him to allow me, I always feel it's an honor when somebody lets me hold that kind of space for them with a horse. It's truly an honor to be able to witness that. So that's just one.
What do you feel like are some of the biggest contributors to unlocking those feelings when it comes to, because I think you probably see it more with something like with horses or even nature in general and different things versus talk therapy seems to unlock or create a connection to emotions that I feel like you don't always see when you're sitting on a couch.
I think a big part of that is being present, right? If we're walking in nature, we have a tendency to be grounded, and it brings us into the present moment. Horses do the same. There's always a little bit, with a lot of people, there's some fear in the background, so they kind of force you to be present. But a horse can feel your heartbeat from 4 feet away.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so there's a sense of this co-regulation happens, right? Their nervous system will match yours. And
I learned that the hard way.
yeah,
It's the energy thing. So I'm always very energetic. And so she would remind me, and I learned a lot about the horses, but she's like, remember, slow your breathing down, slow your energy down. She's like, don't run up to the horse because you scare the shit out of him. Took me a while to figure that out.
Do you see a version of that in dogs?
I do, and dogs, dogs are partnered with for therapy all the time.
Yeah.
It's different though. It's a different level of it.
They're like obligated to love you.
They're just so good at it.
And
We
they'll
need the
support
dogs
you,
therapy.
yet if a rabbit goes, they're gone,
What's up, kid?
right?
Good. It's interesting you bring that up about dogs, but it's like when you think about dogs, they're protecting us and those types of things. They're part of that piece, but horses, they're not trying to protect anybody or anything. They're just comforting you at that point.
And what I've found a lot of times in the equine therapy in that world, the horses are used as a tool. I don't like that. They're my partners. They're part of my family. And I don't ask them to do anything that they don't want or choose to do.
How does that play out?
Angel runs.
Angel runs,
They run.
which is what they want to do.
So he hasn't explained to you, Angel's this mini horse.
I actually met Angel.
Did you meet
I did.
Angel
Yeah,
over
we did
there? Okay.
we did a couple segments over at Silverman's, and
I've seen Angel in a tutu skirt for Halloween, and
he was like, "Whatever you do, don't let this horse out because it's like he's like
us a while to get it
trying to get her back."
I'm not calling Janice.
I can't admit
I'll
defeat.
call Ken before I call Janice.
Hey!
I need help to find the horse. The little one, the midget, it's running.
Yeah, you get the story that we let it out and got it back. See, no problem, all good. Yep. We've been
Okay.
trained. Yep.
How did you come to, and I know that you had a journey before, but how did you come into contact with Silverman's and end up there being in the men's therapy world and helping men get back on course?
Well, so that's a crazy story in itself.
I'm sure.
When I started on my healing journey, as a result of a really horrific, tragic accident, it kind of spiraled me into PTSD, and I was forced to go back and heal everything in my life all at once. I didn't, because I'm pretty tough and I can get through anything. There's nothing I can't handle or survive. At least I thought, right? Because I did. And I spiraled out of control, didn't know what to do. And I had spent from the ages of 12 to 21 drinking. I knew that wasn't an option for me to deal with everything I was going through. So I had to find a different way because I wasn't going to go back down that route again. And so I had started doing the work. I was seeing clients at home. I was working a full-time toxic corporate job that I got to where I hated after 24 years.
Hey, you made it a long time before you hated it.
I can't imagine you in corporate. Like, I just don't see it.
It was awful.
I'm sure.
I liked it at first because there was a lot of creativity involved.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And it kind of, all that got stripped from us, basically. I was a store manager for retail pharmacy. And as cuts came down, employee hours got cut less and less and less and less. I couldn't take care of the customers anymore. And I was spending a lot of time in the pharmacy, and I'm back there and I'm passing drugs out. I'm like, this is not what I want to do. There's a better way to heal than give somebody Prozac.
Right.
And just the stuff I saw was amazing. But I made good money. So it was hard. Can I really make a living doing this? Can I really make a living helping other people? And so I kind of came up with this plan. I'm going to step down, work 3 days a week to keep my insurance, and work on my own business. Well, Kent came home, so Silverman's is literally 386 steps from my back gate to the barn.
Walk it often, do you?
Kent says it's like 500 something, but his legs are short, so he go with mine.
That's why he takes the horse. It's less
Right.
steps.
Well, all of the neighbors out here were a little concerned about a rehab facility coming into the neighborhood. So there was a lot of town council meetings, and Kent had been to one.
Okay.
By this time, they had already passed it, and he came home with the paperwork from it. And he said, Janice, you need to read this. I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. And he said, no. He said, one of the things that he's written in his plans for this center is equine therapy. I'm like, okay. So I start reading it. My first thought went to, I'm going to call this guy, but he's going to want somebody that's EGALA trained or PATH trained, some of the standards in the therapeutic realm of equine therapy,
Okay.
which I'm not. I had looked into doing it before. It's pretty pricey, but it didn't feel right in here. It felt scripted to me.
Okay.
It felt the horses were used as a tool. And I'm not knocking those therapies
Sure.
because they're amazing and they've helped hundreds of thousands of people. So I'm not knocking them, but it didn't feel good for me. And I got with a friend of mine because I had had a lot of people ask me to mentor them. So I got with a friend of mine and we developed the Freedom Way, Equine Assisted Coaching Certification. And it's really using your intuition, really learning about the connection and the energy with the horses. So anyways, that's what I did.
Yeah.
And my first thought, we can all get into that mode of self-doubt, not worthiness.
Sure.
So my first thought was, he is never going to hire me.
Did you know that they were right here already? Were they?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
We knew where the house was going to go.
Okay.
And if it's going to affect any of the neighbors, it would be me.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're right here.
I'm one of the closest to it.
Yeah.
Right? People from all over Cave Creek were showing up at these meetings. But if it would be me that would have a great, big, huge effect on, this facility going in. So Kent says, call him. What's the worst that can happen? And I thought about it, that I'm humiliated. And then I thought, no, the worst that can happen is he says no. So I met with him.
And the answer's the same either way if you don't check.
Right. Yeah. So I gathered up my courage, called him. We went and sat and had lunch for an hour and a half. And halfway, he asked me about the certification. And I told him I'm not. I said, if you're going to require that, I'd be willing to do that and look into it. But here's why I don't want to. And so I told him about my experiences, a little bit about my story and what I'd been through and how much the horses had helped. And halfway through the middle, he looked at me and he said, you said something earlier that really caught my attention about treating the whole mind, body, spirit. And I said, that's important. I think if you add a holistic component to the healing process, that's where that reconnection with yourself happens. That's where that self-love comes into play. And he didn't hire me. This was in the middle of the summer and they were supposed to open in November, I think. And he didn't hire me. And I left that meeting and I started telling everybody I was stepping down from my job because I was going to go to work there. I put it into my mind that this guy's going to hire me. I don't care what I have to do. He's going to hire me. So he told me if I didn't hear from him by October, to give him a call. So October 2nd, I think I called him. He said, well, we got pushed back till January. And, we're still looking around, hiring people, whatever. So I stepped down that November and still told everybody. I used to sit in my room. I just thought I would sit in my room and I would write out what I did with the clients, like I was already there.
Oh.
I'd put names down. Sometimes the guy walks in over there and I'm like, I think you were one of the ones I imagined. I have this deja vu moment for, being it for a moment. And
when I walked in the door, it was a total nightmare. She's like, I've seen this somewhere.
Here we go. But I would literally give them names and I could visualize myself having conversations with them. And the majority of my clients had been women. I'd worked with quite a few men, but the majority had been women. I thought, how's this going to be working with men? Right? And I've been around addiction a lot. Drug, alcohol. I lived with a drug addict for 3.5 years. So it was a realm I was familiar with. My dad was an alcoholic. And I just had in my mind that I was gonna be there. We talked it kept getting pushed back and pushed back. Finally, they opened in March and he hired me. And I stayed on with part-time, working a little bit. And he kept trying to get me to work a few more days and literally asked me, what is it going to take to get you here more? And I said, this is what I need. And he hired me, and I've been there ever since.
And when was that?
March of 2019.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah,
So
because
I've
it's been
been there
five.
since
It
we
was
opened.
5 years.
Yeah.
Was the
almost
anniversary last year, right?
6. Almost 6.
Yeah, almost 6, April.
Well, what an amazing partnership. I mean, it's the lot like behind yours. So
It's
it's like
crazy.
a dream. Yeah, that's like a dream come true.
We joke around about who manifested who. He tells everybody that he manifested the perfect neighbor to come work there. And I tell everybody, no, I manifested the most incredible job in
I
the world for
manifested
me.
the facility to come to my house so I could walk to
did.
work
Yeah.
and use my horses.
Who gets to ride their horse or walk to work
Yeah.
doing what they love? You know, to me, this isn't a job. This is life.
I want to go back to something when you talk about the certification. It's really interesting, Christian. It comes off of us talking about experience yesterday. Where do you find, so when you get into therapy, there's all these certifications and all these things.
Yeah.
But then the experience behind the therapist, what should somebody be looking for in that? Like, you can probably go and search equine therapy. But then is the question deeper? Like, what are the experiences that you have as a therapist that are going to help me in this area? Because I look at a lot of people where it's just certification, but there's other paths like what you did, which is through my experiences, this is what I've created that's different than being the certified person. So is there a lot of difference between somebody that's certified and not certified in this arena?
You know, the certifications are different, and I really think it's, you know, sometimes the equine assisted coaching will get knocked by the therapists. Well, they don't have the experience, and they're gonna, you know, maybe cause harm to somebody.
From a couch therapist? Oh, that's probably not the right word to say. I don't know. What do you call them? What do they, talk therapy?
Talk therapy, but that was perfect. Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
You know, so it's a different world to navigate from my perspective. I think in my world, I think it's knowing your capacity, right? What are my limits? What can I help somebody through?
Okay.
And do I know when I can't,
Yes.
right? Because that's, you know, I'm not a therapist. I didn't go to school for 12 years. But can I take people to a deep place in a safe way where healing can happen, that I'm comfortable? Absolutely.
It's it's like situational awareness, right? It's aware of what they've gone through and going through it and how to work them through that process. But some of that's based on your experiences, not necessarily something that you learned in therapy school, right?
Well, the other thing too is I've done a lot of trauma certification,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So maybe not the therapy side, but everything I do is trauma informed,
Okay.
because that's important to me.
Okay. So do you specialize in trauma therapy through Equine? Is that really what you could say?
I would say that, yeah, I would specialize in the trauma therapy and the addiction part now,
Okay.
right? I'll add that
Right.
to my
Right.
to my resume.
So who's your typical clientele in the private space? I mean, you work with guys like me at Soberman's and then your private clients. Like, what are your typical your clients looking to be healed from, or what are some of the things that you have seen that the Equine has really brought healing to?
A lot of trauma. I tend to, for some reason, attract a lot of women that have been sexually abused.
Okay.
A lot of women that don't know how to find their voice, that aren't empowered. I've worked with a lot of men that have been sexually abused. You know, it's unreal the amount of men that have gone through sexual abuse. I never would have dreamed that. It was really eye-opening for me. And I think that everybody experiences a little bit of trauma in one way or another throughout their life. They may not know it.
And trauma impacts people differently, right?
Yes.
Everybody's trauma is different when it comes down to it. The way I was talking to somebody the other day, it's like the trauma the two siblings experience is completely different, even though it happened at the same time.
Yeah.
Right?
There's argumentation between them.
Right.
Well, that didn't happen. Dad never did that.
Right. What do you think is the most are the benefits of somebody going through the equine therapy versus talk therapy, or is it a combination of it? Is that kind of where you're at? Is a combination of?
I think, and this is just my own personal thoughts, I think if somebody is really going through a lot of trauma, a combination, right? If somebody has a team on their side, I think they're able to really release trauma because it's stored in our bodies. And sometimes, a lot of times, the talk therapy is not going to release the trauma that's stored in your body. And I think it has to be a team. I know several people that have been through very serious, severe, whatever word you want to use, complex PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
And they would have not made it through had they not had a whole team. You know, the traditional talk therapy, the holistic part, they've done equine therapy, they've done trauma-informed yoga to release in the body.
Goat yoga. Fainting goat yoga.
I want to do horse yoga. But having a whole team of people behind you, I get a lot of therapists referred to me, which is interesting, and I think it's just my opinion to be doing any type of work like this, you have to be willing to work on your own healing in the process.
Yeah, what's fascinating as you say that is that for guys, especially for me, it's the visual and the analogy and all the learning that at Soberman's, all the different analogies that you gave with the horses. And I'm trying to think through all the different ones. There were so many of them, but they were all just so amazing. And I think being visual and having that exercise with the horse, like when we did the horseshoes and just some of those different pieces, they all stuck. Mm-hmm. And because they were there with the horse and kind of working through it rather than just a talk session.
I think with the talk sessions, okay, we talk about this, here's your homework, now go do it. But with the horses, it's all experiential. So you can feel it, you can practice it in the moment, and that's why it does stick. It's like, oh, okay, I can hold my boundaries because this horse just made me do it, right? I know what it felt like inside.
Yeah.
So I'm going to remember that rather than go home and wait for something to come up where you have to put up a boundary.
Right.
In real, it's experiential, everything you do with the horse.
But yeah, how often do you have to help people that you're working with like form that connection for the first time if they're just not used to feeling life in general? Is that very common? Because as we're talking about talk therapy, it's like that's just not a typical part of talk therapy.
No. With the horses especially, it almost happens organically. It's almost instant. I've had people that are terrified. They're walking in the stall going like this, right? And something that's really important in what I teach too is nervous system regulation. That's important. You have to make sure that they know how to regulate. I teach regulation.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know how to regulate your own nervous system, how are you surviving in the world, right? A lot of people don't know they have a nervous system. They just know they're like this.
They just know they're nervous.
That's why I'm shaking.
They don't understand how it works, right? They don't understand or have the tools to be able to self-regulate, so they don't feel like this all the time. The horses have the ability to help somebody do that right away. And a horse can sense somebody's nervousness, right? All the horses are different. All the experiences are going to be different. It's hard to explain to somebody because it's something that has to be experienced. But the horses organically can help somebody become not nervous. They'll, in a gentle way, come up and put their head down like this to you. You're like, oh, it's not going to come at me with its teeth or eat me or turn around. And everybody always, well, the horse is going to kick me.
Oh, sure.
Right? Because somebody instilled fear into them when they were this old. And now that's carried through their whole life with this limiting belief of this is how horses are going to be. So I think it happens organically a lot of the times.
Now, do you work with in equine therapy? Is it recommended for kids and children and what's?
I love working with kids.
Yeah. Talk about that a little bit.
They're the best.
I mean, just I think about it with my youngest, and we tried some therapy for some different things, and it never really seemed to take. And I always wonder, I'm like, what would equine therapy maybe have worked him through a few things on things? So I'm just kind of curious.
Everything. I love working with kids.
Okay.
We do an event here every year for the Burn Foundation, one of the Burn Foundations. And it's called Change by Fire. And so we'll have kids out here from 2 to 17 and adults that have somehow's life's been changed by fire. They're either a victim, a caregiver, or have had a family member affected.
Okay.
And I have a video of a 2-year-old boy leading Angel in the round pen. And she just went like this, literally walked like this. And it was the coolest thing.
That's awesome.
The horses can really empower children, right? They can make them feel or help them feel like they have a voice. A lot of time kids don't, especially if you're talking about teens or something that are going through challenges, they don't have a voice. Nobody's listening to them. It's rough at home. The horse can provide that safety for them to open up in sometimes places that they wouldn't. I've seen autistic children. I worked with a little boy. I think he was about 6 the first time I met him. And his mom brought him out here and he wouldn't look at me. He had just become verbal right before he came. So he was only saying a few words and he would not look at me. He didn't want to ride or anything, but he wanted to lead this mare around. So he led her around for an hour. Mom had to hold his hand. And I walked by for safety reasons, behind him. The second time he came, he did kind of look at me a little bit. Mom still had to walk with us, but I got him to do some other things. The third time he came, he walked in and he said, "Hi, Miss Janice." And he took Bailey and said, "Come on, Bailey, let's go," by himself. I turned around and his mom was bawling, right? Because he felt that safe with this horse.
Yeah.
And it increased his verbal skills. She lives on the other side of town, so she's taking him somewhere else now because it was so far for her to come. But he's still doing equine therapy, and he's doing amazing.
Awesome.
Sometimes autistic children will speak their first words on a horse.
Wow.
Why isn't it more widely recommended or known in the healing world?
People don't know about it. That's something that I've been trying to be passionate about for the last 15 years, is just getting the awareness out. And there's actually an incredible documentary that will be out this year it's called Rescued Hearts, and it will be on the healing power of horses and how they can change people's lives, and the awareness around the horses and the care of the horses. I can't wait for it to come out because I think it's going to really help get that information out. You say equine therapy to somebody and they're like, "What's that?"
Yeah.
The majority of the men that come through Soberman's have no clue what it is. Right? I think if more people knew about it, they would be seeking it.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, when I think about kids, and that's why I asked the kids and marriage therapy, and I just think of all the different things where, it probably gives perspective and gives somebody a different type of therapy that may be the healing that they need.
Yeah. I had 45 young girls out here just a couple weeks ago, and one of the little girls had shared with me that, she was having a little bit of a rough day, I could tell. Her little brother, I think she said he was 7 months old, had just gotten rushed to emergency that morning having seizures. And the horse, we were partnered with Daisy Duke, and that was the first time. She's a new horse to me. So that was the first time I had partnered with her in doing the equine therapy. She's never done it before.
Right.
And this little girl was leading her, and I could tell the little girl was really sad. She was nervous and scared. And I had her lean into the horse, and again, this mare just pulled her neck around and just held this little girl. And I was almost in tears. And when she was done, she looked at me and she said, "Thanks, I feel better." She didn't need to know why, but somebody just held that space for her.
Yeah.
Just because it was a 1,100-pound horse. right? But, you get a person going, oh, it's okay, they'll be all right. Well, sometimes that's not what they need to hear. They need to hear, yeah, this sucks. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to feel what you're feeling, and that's what the horses allow them to do.
Mm.
The horse isn't telling them it's going to be better. The horse isn't telling them you need to think this way, you need to forget about it, you need to drop it, you need to, right? Sometimes as humans, we all have the best intentions, but somebody just needs to be allowed to be.
Sometimes as humans, we just need to shut up.
Yeah.
I've been telling Steve that for years.
Right? Shut up and listen.
The horse allows somebody to just be, to just feel.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, right?
Yeah, which is something that is not easy for everybody.
It's not.
To just learn how to feel, to just be.
It's not.
Yeah.
But for some reason, the horses make it easier.
What would you tell somebody how to become aware of how they're feeling? Like when they're in that point of trying to make a turnaround in their life, or they're experiencing that trauma or the thing that keeps coming up. I mean, how do you get somebody to start feeling and taking the time to look inwards in what's truly happening in their life?
One of the things, I'll have somebody sit with their breath for a moment, right?
Okay.
Do some deep breathing. I will invite them. And with me, I think it's all about the invitation. Not, you need to do this. It's, may I? Asking permission, first of all, right?
Yes.
May I invite you, or can I invite you to sit with your breath for a moment? Drop out of your head, because we spend our time up here.
Yeah.
Drop out of your head and just feel in your body for a moment. Can you describe to me what's going on in your body?
That's the worst question you guys ask as therapists. Describe how you're feeling. What? Put a word to it. I don't know.
But you learned.
I know.
You did it.
You know what?
I was going to say, what was your common answer?
I don't know. Let me think about it. Oh, I'm supposed to be out of my head right now. Janice taught me this amazing way to take naps as an adult at Soberman's.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah, she was, I remember.
You showed me this room.
I remember the first one was the garage, at Soberman's. But I remember the first Monday we go in there and she's going to do the whole mala bead exercise, right? And going through the I am affirmations and what it does. And there's like 7 or 8 of us in there on mats with the Mexican blankets. And she turns the light off and she starts reading this meditation. And we're all holding our mala beads until you realize, like, I just dropped them and I'm falling asleep. And then you hear the next guy next to me snoring. And then half the time she'd turn the light on and we'd just leave people in there sleeping. There was one time I got left in there. I'm like, what happened? Where'd everybody go?
Steve's finally at peace.
Right.
Then he would wake up or we'd go in there the next week. Where's the juice boxes and the animal crackers?
So I have a question for you that I always, well, I can't say that I always, because I haven't asked this of a lot of people. And you knew me coming in, and you've seen my journey. What do you see? What do you see in the work that I've done? What do you see in me as a human and in the journey from where I was to where I am?
I think one of the biggest things that I feel and can see is your connection with yourself. Right? You're more connected with who you are.
Yeah.
I don't think it was ever, I see a lot of men come in that lack confidence. And you never lost your confidence.
Nope.
You're a confident guy.
No, but I had to learn through that, the difference between confidence and ego and arrogance.
Yeah.
There's a big difference.
Yeah, there is. You're not in your ego anymore.
No.
You're not. You're more centered and grounded. I think you've always mentioned your pause, identify, respond, right? And I think you can feel you pause for a moment. And I don't think you had any pause. You had react. I think everything was a reaction,
Always.
right? And I think that's one of the biggest differences. But you're connected with yourself. You know who you are. You know who you want to be. You know who you want to show up as. And you're showing up as, I think sometime when our ego gets involved, we're hiding a little bit behind a mask of who we think everybody else wants us to be. This facade of, I have to show up this way. I have to keep up this appearance, this, I don't want to say act, but it is kind of an act, right? This is the way I'm supposed to show up. When you get to that place where you're reconnected with yourself, you can step into the authenticity of who you are. And that's what I see.
You
now.
couldn't describe my journey any better when it comes down to it, because that has been the thing that we've talked a lot about as a team, as a family, all the things, is that, you know, and I think that was the holdback. What you said there was, when we have that disconnect and the ego and who we think we're supposed to be showing up as for all these other people, it actually holds us back from making the decisions that we need to heal and take a break from, because we're so in this moment. And that was, for me, I mean, that was the hardest part, was taking public perception and reputation and all the things, and taking the shame and guilt that goes with, okay, I need to go to rehab because I'm broken. And that's the story we tell ourselves, rather than, well, I just got off course. You know, one of the gentlemen that's at the house now that I had talked to and all the things, and that was one of the things when I first talked to him. He's like, you know, everybody tells me I'm broken and and all the things. I'm like, dude, you're not broken. You're off course, right? It's just you're 1 degree off course, and we know that if you get 1 degree off course, everything gets effed up after that, right? And it's just, how do we bring that back around? And for me, that was dealing with that arrogance and that ego, and part of that was keeping me from the journey and the person that I was born to be at the end of the day. But I also had to go through the shit to get here. It was part of the journey. It was part of the story.
It has to be.
What have been some of the best practices you have found to try to encourage, like, guys who sat in this seat, and as their journey with you might be coming to an end and they're getting ready to try to go back to normalized life? What have been some of the best practices you've tried to encourage them to implement on a daily or a weekly, in order to stay in that same trajectory of finding health?
Number one, some kind of meditation or quiet practice, whatever that, you know, people have this facade about meditation as sitting like a Zen monk for an hour, right? Nobody can shut their brain off like that, right?
If you can, you're really special.
Yeah, I can now,
Right?
but it took me a long time to get there. But
Sure.
people don't understand what meditation can be. Going for a walk, right? To me, sitting on my horse. I could sit out here and just sit in the pen with them all the time, right? So for some, it's actually funny, because I'll talk to some men sometime, well, I love doing the dishes. What, can you do you give lessons?
I'm out on that therapy.
But somebody that loves doing the dishes, that's meditation.
Sure.
Right? Because you're just washing your car, organizing the garage, right? So figure out what works for you. I teach them all beads.
Yep.
Right? The men seem to like them because it's tactile. You have something in your hand and you're working with an affirmation.
Yeah.
You say an affirmation over 108 times, you will start changing the neural pathways to your brain, right? We tell ourselves, I'm not worthy, I'm broken, until we feel it and we become it. But why is it hard for us to believe if we tell ourselves something positive, we'll feel it when we become it?
Yeah.
The second thing is, what are you going to change? What are you going to change when you go home? Because you cannot get healthy in the same environment that you became unhealthy in. So even though you've been away for a month and you've done all this work, you've changed your thoughts, you've changed this, when you go home, change something. Make your environment different. Flop the pictures on the wall.
So that is a loaded thought.
It's a loaded. Well, go ahead if you've got something to go off of there.
Well, I'm just thinking of like the amount of people I know that, you know, maybe are working a job, and they have become a version of themselves that they no longer love, and they feel stuck. They feel those things, and also it's the thought of going, well, you're not going to find the version you love anymore if you're stuck in the same place that you became an unhealthy version of yourself.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a loaded.
But what can you change in your work environment?
See, and I didn't catch this. It's always hard to, like, when you're in it, we talked about this earlier, right? When you're in it, understanding the energy aspect of environment and how much it impacts. And it's been so fascinating how much the conversation has changed in my own day-to-day with real estate agents, getting them to understand, like, if you're in a shitty spot, then you need to change your environment. Your energy is stagnant. And it really came to fruition at the office was probably about 4 months after I had been back, being in the office. And I'm like, it just feels, there's something that feels off. And we went through and we changed all the artwork, we changed the paint, we changed the colors, we changed the setup, the layout in the office, and it changed everything. Even to the point of at home, environmental wise, where I would drink and all the things, I decided when I came back, it took me a while, like, I don't want to work at home. And I couldn't go back into my office comfortably and sit there because it was where I would drink. It was where I would try to stop drinking. It was all the things. And the energy was just never there for me to go back. And part of it was, I think I didn't want to work at home anymore. I just wanted to be at home. And so now it's like a 21-year-old nightclub because Christian's office is in there and it's all DJ mode all the time and there's incense burning and it smells good and you just kind of want to hang out there. I'm like, I love the energy in this place now. But it was something that I didn't realize how impactful it can be and how it can, over time, in all of our lives, where an environment change slowly kills the energy a little bit over time as things, even our partners in the building, they came in the other day and they're like, yeah, we're trying to change this from a little bit more corporate. And they went into 201 yesterday and they're like, oh, we're gonna have to do more. Because they're trying to change the environment. And you realize, like, oh, it's the environment that causes people to come up, and it changes the energy and it changes the success. And so it's really fascinating you bring that up, because I was like, whatever. I'm a big fan of it now.
Listening to this,
I'm a huge fan of it.
This is huge.
It was so intense, and now you look at things and go, what needs to change? And sometimes it's not something here, it's something around you that you keep walking into. Yeah.
You can't just change internal without changing the external, right? If you went home every day after work and you sat in that chair, your body is on autopilot, because you didn't just get into addiction overnight. This happened gradually, maybe half a lifetime, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, maybe 30 years. So you're on autopilot, right? So when you go home and that chair is still sitting in there, you're gonna go sit in the chair, your hand's gonna think, your brain's gonna think, man, I should have a drink in my hand, right? But if your chair's over there now, when you go to sit down, it's going to throw you off. And you're going to forget about needing the drink, because you're going to be thinking about, oh, my chair's not there anymore. So your brain is distracted into doing something different.
We have to disrupt the pattern.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when we drive somewhere over and over again, there's just muscle memory. You don't think about it until you go a different way. And
you're on autopilot, and all of a sudden you're there. How did I get here?
Every day.
So I occasionally brush my teeth left-handed.
That's the thing. You don't think about brushing your teeth. We don't go in the bathroom and say, I'm going to pick up my toothpaste in my left
I think about when my wife needs to brush her teeth.
Turn the water on.
Have you ever tried to brush your teeth left-handed?
Yep. All last year for 10 months.
I look like I need major help afterward. I was just like, I don't know what's happening. Why this left arm doesn't work the same, apparently.
I'm probably better at brushing my teeth left-handed because I learned how to play racquetball left-handed, so I at least can.
Oh my gosh.
But have you ever heard of somebody poking themselves in the eyeball while brushing their teeth with a toothbrush?
I don't think so.
Next time you see Wendy, ask her.
Oh no. That doesn't even sound right.
It doesn't. But when you're going to bed and you hear, ow, I'm like, did you poke yourself in the eye with a toothbrush? Yeah. And it's silence. You're like, what is happening in there? Okay, so two things. So environment change or energy change, and then what else practical, tactical for people?
The self-care and the self-love. That's got to be a priority. If you don't love yourself, how are you ever going to love anybody else?
Do you have any examples of tangible self-love?
I can go straight off of that. I mean, the self-love in what I grew up with was I learned to love myself or have that self-love when I started exercising at Soberman's again, where it was something that I wanted for myself, that I was going to create that habit, and it was creating confidence, and it was creating all the things. But in the past, what I watched was in business and real estate was my dad would try it, he would get busy, and that would be the first thing, would throw out every bit of self-care, self-love possible to go love somebody else. And so we have to find that priority of, like for me, it was just the exercise and making it a habit because I loved it, not because it was doing something else. And I think so many of us get into diets and think it's self-love, and actually has to do with comparison or somebody bitching about our weight or not feeling right. It's not truly loving yourself for the purpose of loving yourself. It always has some means to an end when we're doing it.
Or competition.
Right.
The comparison and competition.
I mean,
part of it.
like your self-love journey, like the exercises, the movement, the different way you're exercising is for a long-term purpose, and you're loving yourself through to get to that point with the kids and be healthy and be able to do all those things. That's what self-love is. There's no end goal. It's a journey that never ends.
Yeah.
And it's almost, if you think about the opposite, what's not self-love? Me sitting here feeling shame, feeling guilt, telling myself I'm broken, telling myself I'm worthless, right?
Yeah.
That's totally the opposite. Those behaviors need to change,
Yeah, that's good.
right? None of us are broken. Maybe we have challenges that we're trying to work through, but we're not broken. And when we can accept all parts of ourselves, the shadow side, the light side, the dark side, whatever it is, when we can be in true acceptance of ourselves, I think that's the self-love happens organically.
Yeah, that's good. You have to stop ignoring some of the secret parts.
Yeah.
Face them. Yeah.
Embrace them, accept them, because they're part of who you are, but they don't have to define who you are.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people get really stuck, is that becomes who they are, or their job becomes who they are, right? When you really look at the question, who am I? My name's Steve. Okay, no, that's your name. That's not who you are, right? Who are you in here? When you can get to that space and not be in judgment of yourself, treat yourself like your own best friend, then you're in a place of self-love.
I like it. I like it.
It's one of the hardest things that I hear in alumni calls and some of the different people that I talk to is just the self-love part, which almost becomes selfish. And the reality is that my wife said it in one of our meetings, and I loved it and kind of combined it, which is it's also nourishment, right? It's selfish nourishment at the end of the day in order for you to be a better person. How do you help? I mean, I know how you did it with us when we were at Soberman's, but the transition when somebody has gone through the process, like I did, with a lot of drinking and a lot of failures and a lot of lessons, but they're coming out of it with their families and their families understanding the selfishness that has to happen in order for them to become that person, I guess, that everybody's always wanted to be, or not, depending on how it shakes out, right? You know what I mean? Like when somebody comes out, that selfishness and the self-love, when they're trying to create boundaries for themselves, what's the hardest part?
I think people learning to communicate, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we learn, because we don't know how to communicate. We don't know how to listen. We think we're listening, but are we hearing what other people are saying?
Right.
Right? We listen, but we don't hear.
Yeah.
If we can learn how to hear and we can learn to communicate, there's a difference in telling somebody, hey, I'm going fishing with the guys, versus my going fishing with the guys is part of my own self-care, and I'm nourishing my mind, body, and spirit through this, and this is something that's really important with me. I hope you'll go out with your girlfriends, right? If we're talking family.
Right.
If there's some connection, I've seen so many people get jealous, oh, well, my husband's always gone doing this. And I'm like, I'm glad when my husband goes out and does stuff.
Right.
because I need to do the same.
Yeah.
Right? That fuels him, and I need to do the things that fuel me. But there's that communication piece, right?
Yeah, that's been a huge factor for Wendy and I through our healing process over the last couple of years through all this is learning to communicate what our needs are without each other.
Right.
Which is like even a couple of weeks ago, it was a crazy week, and I just told her, I'm like, I need 48 hours by myself. I'm going up north. She's like, cool, see you on Monday. Right? But before, it's like, hey, do you mind? Right? We do the pussyfooting around of, well, why are you going up there? And like, it's just like, hey, I need to go be by myself and go through this process. But what you said, the communication piece and how people come together is really important. You guys are really good about it, right? I mean, you and Rachel, you can jump on a plane and go see a friend and not be a big deal.
Yeah, no, but that wasn't always that way.
Right.
My wife she's always terrible at planning her own getaways, and so I've always tried to tell her, like, how can I help you? But I will take the healthiest version of you, and that is when you come back from hanging out with your besties and your friends, and when you're filled up, it's like you just operate differently, and that's I want to be the filled up version of me for my kids, for my family, and I want her to be that way, and yeah, but I think communication is right on how you communicate and how you portray it and how you are able to really help expand the understanding of who you are to your loved one. Right. is a big deal, yeah.
That communication takes the perspective of selfishness out of the equation, because you now have this mutual agreement of, this is what I need to do, and I hope you'll find something that you need to do. So there's no questioning, oh, he's not being selfish, this is what he needs.
I think that's where the communication gap is like, oh, you're being selfish. You don't want to hang out with me this weekend. Well, no, I need to go be away from you so that I can fill up, so that I can be a better version of myself for you down the road. But it's always met with this contention. Not always, but you know what I mean.
But when you've set boundaries through the communication, right? Hey, this is something I need. With the support when somebody leaves treatment, setting the boundaries, right? But knowing how to communicate those boundaries. Yeah. And realizing that boundaries are healthy for both people.
Mm-hmm.
That's healthy for the other person too. And honoring what their boundaries are. Yeah. Asking for what you need. That's a huge one.
Do you think people instantly, when you say boundaries, it becomes a negative rather than a positive?
It does.
Why is that?
I think when people think of boundaries, they kind of think of walls.
Yeah.
This is my boundary, don't cross it. And it's so firm, and and sometimes it's not that we need to explain them, but it's communicate them, right? What is the boundary and what is it for?
What's the purpose?
This doesn't really have anything to do with you. This is for me.
Right.
This is what's going to help me become healthy. This is what's going to help me not feel this way, right? And not blaming. We tend to blame when we don't even realize it. You made me feel this way. Yeah. Well, nobody can make you feel anything. You're in charge of your own feelings.
Right.
Somebody else can't make you feel a way, but I think it's normal for people to do that, and they throw that out there.
And it's an uncommunicated cycle that I feel like so many people, families, couples, friendships live in, which is when you do this thing, it makes I feel this way. And when I feel this way, I act this way. And when I act this way, you feel this way. And when you feel this way, you act this way. And when you act this way, I feel this way. And it's this cycle that people,
right?
Yeah, that people have a hard time.
You took my candy bar.
Yeah, and dude, what's crazy? How many minute tensions are involved just because of lack of clarity or lack of conversation or lack of communication? And it's like, why is there this pent up energy or this tension between us or whatever? When in reality, it's just we just haven't communicated well.
As you're saying that, we have these expectations. So when we're in conversations with somebody, and if it's an argument or something, when you're going around in circles like that, right? We're such habitual creatures that if this happened last month, this conversation with my wife, and this is the way it went, I'm expecting it to go that way this time. So we're already on this roller coaster of, okay, if I say this, she's going to do this, and then it's going to be this argument, and blah, 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 blah.
Won't say it at all.
So we're right.
That's where I was going.
That becomes worse. If we have these intentions that we don't have any expectations and we stay present, what we'll find is our conversations will change and will be different, because what our thoughts are is what we manifest. So that does tie it back to with Mitch. If I had walked away from there saying this guy is never going to hire me and I'm not going to get this job, I wouldn't be working there.
But it's the positive part of it and the outcome and the outreach that you did to get there, which was
Right.
having the hard conversation, right? And then knowing. I think a lot of times we assume that the conversation is going to go worse than what it is, rather than assuming like, hey, this is going to make our relationship better, we should have this conversation.
Yeah.
Where would you, if we kind of convert the boundary thing to, you know, because everybody that's listening to this podcast is for different reasons. It's for business, it's for rehabilitation, all those things. When you talk about boundaries in life, in business, what's the best way for somebody to communicate that? So I kind of think about it in business, and we've been doing a lot of this in our own business right now, of just not setting boundaries, but just communicating why we're doing the things and why we're putting these boundaries in place. How is the best way for somebody to communicate that, you know, when we're in this rebuild phase?
Some of that might be shifting the wording around it too,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if structure is the right word, but, you know, figure it out. And I think it's going to be different for different circumstances, different businesses, whether it's personal or business, right? I think the context of it's going to be a little bit different, depending on what it is that you're doing. But it's really learning how to express what it is that you want. What's the desired outcome?
Do you think that also
want from this?
comes with a why or an explanation of it?
Good question. If we can get to a place, do we always need to know the why?
Not always, but I mean, it's kind of like some of the communication we've had internally in the business of, I would ask you this question. Do you think that sometimes when we have a directive or something that we're building, do you think it's important for you to know the why behind it or where we're going with it, as to far as like, if I communicate a boundary, like I can't do these things because of X, Y, Z, does it make sense versus me just drawing a line in the sand, I'm just not going to do these things?
I think it's helpful because it's more perspective to work with. Why can also, like, your whys can be such a motivator. They can probably also be, if they're unhealthy, such an like immobilizer. Like people that fear change or fear like any of those things, and they're just because of whatever the whys they have. But I think it's more information to work with in a work environment to be able to make those decisions clearly. Yeah.
You can think of it from a perspective of sharing your vision of what makes the why, right, becomes a little bit different.
Yeah.
Because then you're engaging somebody's curiosity instead of them questioning. Oh, okay, this sounds interesting. Now you've got my attention. That makes sense. Now that I can see your vision, I understand. The energy of it's a little bit different, because we can get so hung up on the why that we don't hear what you're saying. Does that make sense? Because when we start talking about it that way, sometimes it becomes personal. Oh, you're setting this boundary because I did something.
Right.
Oh, sure.
People are insecure,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So just changing the verbiage sometimes change the energy of it.
Yeah, no, I think that's great too, because there's my kids. My kids are the why for so many things that I do in life, right? I feel like that's almost a standard thing for a lot of parents to feel. It's like, and so I think it's always a great starting place to go, all right, because I want this for them, I'm going to do this. And it's being aware that even whether it's a work environment or a personal environment, being like, hey, I'm not making this choice, or I'm going to make this choice not to do this thing, which I think there's a lot of time that we have to say no to things more than try new things. It's actually saying no to a lot of things that keep us in those boundaries and keep us in the state of health, that I feel like it creates better understanding for even like us and our dynamic, whether it's saying yes to something or no to something. It's understanding the how and the why that we're made up with.
And sometimes I think that, I think the point in me asking that question is that sometimes when you just lay something down, and not that it needs an explanation, but again, back to how somebody feels, sometimes it just helps them understand that boundary so that they're not taking it personally, right? Because I think some people take it personally when you're like, I'm not taking calls after 8 o'clock. It's not because I don't like you or because I want to be here. It's because I'm trying to do something better for my family. So,
Dude, it's such an interesting thing, like trying to throw this monkey into this ring right here, but
oh God.
no, of just watching for the past, for like the past.
I'm surprised she's not over here with us.
She's enjoying the shade. However many years now, you have a lot of people that are like, whether it's facts don't care about your feelings, or I'm not worried about how you feel, I'm worried about truth, or what's, finding your truth. There's all those things. Even this conversation, no one can make you feel a certain way, but at the same time, realizing like, well, my actions have made a lot of people feel certain ways. And not that I can carry the responsibility for the way in what they chose to feel. There's probably things I actually still could do that better set them up for success or not have to navigate that in their own personal life, especially when it comes to those close to you.
Yep.
Yeah, good point.
I was just thinking of the journey of like feelings, like, so should we care about them? Should we not care about them? Should we be in charge of them? Should we just feel them? They're a wild thing, emotions.
If we show up every day with the intention, I'm going to be a better version of myself today than I was yesterday, it kind of drops some of that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
we're
that's
not,
true.
We're constantly trying to be a better version of ourselves. We're not going to be so worried about how we're making other people feel, right? That's still their choice. They're in charge of their own feelings. But if I'm mindful and trying to be the best version of myself, then that's going to happen less.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to do the old things. If I'm showing up authentic and not trying to be, when we're not being real, that's when we're being sneaky. That's when we're hiding our addiction. That's when we're lying. That's when we're doing all these things. So we automatically know inside that my actions, yes, are causing them to feel a certain way. So when we start showing up, it alleviates some of that thought that we have around that.
I do know one thing that fixes everything. It's googly eyes. At least in the house. Well, they fixed them for me. I don't know how everybody else feels.
How many did you put in the house?
Oh, don't ask.
It's an ongoing
a year later,
thing, right?
I still found one.
Tammy sent me a bunch of googly eyes the day before I left, and so we riddled the house. Well, I riddled the house. There was no we. Me and the mouse in my pocket. Yeah. And I don't know. I put them on everything in the kitchen. The entire refrigerator, every condiment had googly eyes on it. And then in my room, I put them everywhere you could possibly imagine. Like under the bed frame when you laid down, there'd be eyeballs looking at you. And
those are the first ones I moved.
I know. On the backs of the chairs. I think it took her 6 months to finally find all of them. And then every now and again when I go back,
The new guy in the house is like, someone's watching me.
I take my handy can of googly eyes and just toss a few here and there.
Have you ever opened up your fridge and had the ketchup and the mustard staring at you? The juice, the cantaloupe on the counter, the bananas.
I mean, that's just life in the office, I think.
100%, all the time, all the time. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Absolutely.
And where can somebody find you for equine therapy here in Phoenix?
So my website is janicestory.com.
janicestory.com, that's easy.
Story Ranch, I love it.
Story Ranch. Well, thank you so much, not only for this time, but all the impact that you make in this world. It's definitely a better place because of you.
Well,
So thank you for that.
for what you're doing, because I've listened to the podcasts that you've had so far, and they've been pretty incredible, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey.
Well,
and to
thank you.
witness you, and I just want you to know how proud I am of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's so fun being out here again. I appreciate you.
Fun to have you.